Discussions. I'm Jonathan Vare Duncan, host and rogue furry art therapist.
And I'm Sasha Jones. I work in both the furry and fantasy illustration communities.
True.
Yep.
If you know what's good for you, you're going to support us on patreon.com/Jonathan Vare and patreon.com/
Sasha R. Jones.
And even if it's just like 6 pennies a day, we really appreciate it. So we are here to talk about a topic near and dear to our hearts, whether we wanted it to be or not. We actually didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And that's the question: is the furry fandom something that exists just for fun, or does it have any propensity to be more than just fun and fantasy? Does it involve things like serious real life themes, politics, and all these other ideas? It's, I think, an unfair question. So the only way to tackle unfair questions is to get a lot of good ideas from a lot of different places and try and empathize with people who are outside of yourself. So we took this to the Furry Fandom members. Thank you to everyone who participated by commenting in our Telegram groups or commenting in the context of a journal or submission. We even had some comments going on our Twitch streams, because together we stream over 50 hours a week on twitch.tv/Jonathan Vare and twitch.tv/Sasha R. Jones. Now, obviously, we have our own contexts and our own opinions, but before we talk about anything that has to do with us, I think a really good place to start is what you all had to say. So that's what we're going to do. And rather than reading off comments, I thought it'd be better if we got to share screen and point out some things that are just like a nice little salad of differing opinions. If you are in the chat right now and you want to flag us down to get our attention, do an @Jonathan Vare for your comment. We will be checking the comments all the time on 2 screens. Except this one chat needs to reload. There we go. Excellent. So thanks to all the people who showed up so far. I cannot wait to have this discussion.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, but especially within the last few weeks.
Yeah, especially in the last few weeks. I talked to Cothrix. He is a YouTuber. I guess you call him a fur tuber. And this is like, this conversation I had with him was probably one of the final pushes I had to say, okay, I finally have to do this. So thanks to Cothrix for your time. So we have a start from Ethereal. I'm annoyed at the vocal dominance of 2 extremes and the prioritization of tribalism over otherwise professed tolerance. So I think everyone can agree that extremes are pretty frustrating, and that makes a lot of sense. But I really like how Arcus the Bear started things out. I'm frustrated that so many furries seem to think that they can ignore the rest of the world's problems when those problems are caused by people, and the fandom is made up of, you guessed it, people. I wish people would learn how to engage in a compassionate manner with each other about everything, not just furry stuff, instead of sticking their head in a hole and going la 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 la. Also, yeah, the extremists on both sides are dominating the conversation. They have a right to their opinion and to speak it, but they also are subject to counter arguments and don't have the right to shove people that don't agree with them out of the fandom. Another comment I want to start with here is from Jumanji Oi Oi Oi. And props for having a screen name that's just a lot of fun to read. Yes, I hate it when furries blurt their political opinions at me. I don't see the need for it nor the use. I was interested and asked, seems pretty rude for people to throw personal opinions at you without trying to understand you first. Was someone directly responding to a thing you said? And they said, oh, I'm not talking about any specific instance. I honestly just don't care for people going about spouting political views on furry websites. You know, you could take that to, they said, they take it to Facebook posts or YouTube comment sections or an actual person in front of them if that's what they wanted. Anytime someone says that they're frustrated with the situation, I try and ask them what their personal experiences have been, and you'll notice that pattern from me. If someone feels like they've been trespassed upon, especially in something political, I do want to know is someone directly contacting you, or is this just something you're seeing in thumbnails or on your Twitter feed? Because the difference between those kinds of interactions, it kind of gets lost to your memory. So it's really important that we be conscientious of exactly how those interactions went. So Cyrus here is one of my mentees. We've done a lot of talking about things. He says, I don't think people are mad at furries who make things too political. I think people are mad at furries that make things too partisan. I told him I felt like that was a bit of a simplification, but he touched on something that I thought was really important. Too many people go out of their way to look into someone's history and try to find anything, or in some cases make up a narrative via rhetoric in a can to label them as the opposition. It makes me sad and to an extent nervous to put my stuff out there or to explore some ideas. I had another friend post on Twitter recently that they are worried about people who say, you still follow this person, what's your explanation? Because it puts them on the spot without having any consideration for the sensitivity of a person's relationship.
Yeah, and a follow is not necessarily an endorsement either. I mean, sometimes it's just because you want to keep tabs on somebody, whether you approve of what they're doing or not. You want to know what's happening.
ContraPoints follows Jordan Peterson. I follow Jordan Peterson. I don't endorse the majority of Jordan Peterson tweets I see, but I follow him specifically because it's sort of like a palate cleanser. I mean, I don't agree with Ron Paul. I follow him too. There are plenty of examples of this. And you'll see politically minded people following many different kinds of accounts. So don't be surprised if someone has a reason you may not expect for a follow. I thought this was a pretty good comment from VS. Made me really want to meet them in person.
I feel like this is one of the most valuable comments I saw on this.
Yeah. People tend to ignore the fact that politics is a part of everyday life, everyday choices, everyday values presented towards others. Leave politics out of X is generally an attempt to stifle discussion of existing political aspects of X, and therefore can be a statement towards preserving the status quo. It's also been observed to be an effective misargument to go on ad nauseum. This is also called sea lioning, about things until people without established personal perception on things grow weary of the discussion and just want it to end, which is exactly what people argumenting in this manner want. When we showed this comment in the stream, a journalist that's in my fan base made sure to say he appreciates the power of someone who is educating and going out of their way to express things. Kosika here had some interesting things to say, but I would rather go to their original comment down here.
Did they have? I think they were mostly just responding.
Oh, so maybe it was a comment.
The one it was the response to this other comments, which we can get to.
Okay, you want to talk on this one?
Let's see. What was the comment before? Do we need to respond to that? No, this one was a little bit confusing.
Yeah, that was a little too confusing.
I thought the response here was more interesting than the original comment. So
I do want to say this. Tet MWF says, simply put, I can't take any political material posted by any furry seriously. We pretend to be animals on the internet. Little difficult to see past that and read an argument on why capitalism should be overthrown when the person posting has an avatar of their goofy dog persona. Kostika says, what avatar would make you take someone seriously? Isn't an avatar irrelevant to the content a person discusses? To MWF says, this is why I included a bit about pretending to be animal people on the internet. That's the point. The avatar is just icing on the cake. Meanwhile, we have Scott Ruggles with a picture of himself.
Yeah.
Which I thought is like a hilariously jarring juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Because there's an incredible amount of diversity in this fandom. And even on sites like For Affinity, you'll find people here posting anything from cosplay pics to recipes to political cartoons to, super hot gay furry porn.
But I feel like the comment that the guy up here made almost says more about, like, does that mean that they're unable to take themselves seriously if they're not taking anybody else seriously?
Yeah.
That seems like it's bringing a lot of personal context to things that really doesn't apply to most people.
Mm. All right.
Yeah. I think what we have in the chat so far is actually a good demonstration of already starting things off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
So DZ Dog says, if you're not as left wing as me, you're a monster. And that's their take as what the modern furry fandom is espousing. Spencer says in response, that's not a good generalization to make when a good part of the fandom is trying to push out literal Nazis. DZ Dog responds, I'm just being facetious, that and going off my own anecdotal experience. Yeah, I don't think that making a broad statement like that is really constructive to the conversation, which is sort of our point here.
Yeah, so what DZ Dog's doing right there is saying that this is an extreme thing. It's skewing in one direction. And then they actually didn't unpack what they said with any seriousness in response to what Spencer said. So I do not know who DZ Dog is, but it doesn't seem like they are behaving in a way to move the discussion forward.
Yeah, so I wanted to read that to give an example of if we want to have this conversation, then we can't just throw things like that out there, because that only pushes things in the other direction. So, and
something else we noticed are people who talk about the validity of something beyond escape tend to unpack their ideas. Or there are even a few people who were centrists who said, I don't understand a lot, or I'm feeling inadequate or confused about it. But we found more often than not people who said it's just for fantasy, I don't like politics. They didn't share their feelings as to why.
Yeah, so we have a few examples on this page of that, where usually comments that were like, it's just for fun, are the shortest comments, because they don't really have anything further to say. They're not thinking about it at a deeper level.
Yeah, the fandom's where I go to get away, says Vixie Fox. I don't think politics should be left out. Or I do think politics should be totally left out.
That's all they have to offer to the discussion.
Yeah. So that was just, for whatever it's worth, that's something that we noticed. Now, so Ariana says, probably in response to DZ Dog, I personally had far more issues with the far right people in the fandom. Depending on the day and the person, I've been accused of being everything from an SJW to everything wrong with the world. So I've learned to roll with the punches. So that's their experiences. There will probably always be people who have countering experiences, it seems. But I am glad that Ariana unpacked that a little.
Shall we read her other comment?
Yeah, so this is another comment from her. Frankly, I don't like politics, but politics have become more ubiquitous and essential than ever. I saw a quote recently that said, we were always told not to talk about religion or politics to avoid causing a fight. Now we don't know how to discuss either religion or politics. The fandom is a reprieve and safe haven for a lot of people, and I encourage and respect that. But when people bring their politics into the fandom as a way of hurting people, then I feel it should be addressed.
Yeah, and so I was saying that this actually harkens back to a comment we had in one of our Telegram groups from a couple of people said the same thing, that their family does not tolerate discussion of religion or politics. They can't talk about that with the people they care about in their real life. And so for them, furry fandom is an escape, but in the opposite direction, that they get to discuss these things that they're curious about and that they feel are important, but they don't have other outlets to. So sorry if I cough a few times. I'm a little sick today, but yeah, so I think it's very worth looking at the idea that, like, yeah, it's an escape for a lot of people, but that absolutely does not mean the same thing for everyone. And for some people, the fact that it's an escape makes it inherently political in its own way. So, for example, if somebody is maybe have a homophobic family and they're trying to figure out their identity, or if they're exploring their gender, the fandom is a place where they get to actually do that. And it's that's not, I think the word escape is too simple there, because it's an opportunity for them to move their lives forward and to self-actualize and to, like, grow as human beings in a way that they do not have the chance to on a daily basis in their real lives. But if you have that sort of existence, then that is inherently political. You can't get away from it.
So let's talk about one of our groups on Telegram. We have a member here, Cyver, who said this. I usually don't talk much about politics online, but not because I don't have an interest in them or out of a preference to keep those parts of my life separate. It's more out of a sense of fatigue and the feeling that I'd more or less just be screaming at a wall that's very likely to scream back. I have very little reach online. And after some time passed, after some time passed, I'd come to find out that the groups of friends I usually talk to online are very hostile to my political views. It's essentially impossible to engage with them on that topic. Between them and my own heavily divided family, I feel very tired and isolated on that front. So for me, I suppose furry is a bit of both. I love reading the stories and seeing the work of all the fabulously talented people we have here. But it's also the only place I really get to see any kind of discourse going on that I actually agree with. So it seems like something that's far more frustrating and personal for this user than just politics. Leave it out. They did also say something very interesting I want to emphasize. I have very little reach online. So, yeah, Cyber, I think, is relatively newer to the fandom, like no older than 2 years, I'm pretty sure. And I had the honor of working with them, a wonderful client and really wonderful person that I got to meet with. And it reminds me, I do have certain privileges because I'm an artist. My fan base isn't that big online. Like on Twitch, it's pretty small numbers. And while I have over 16,000 followers on Fur Affinity, I get less than 0.01% of those views or comments or anything.
Yeah.
But if I create art and people already have certain expectations of me, then I have a certain amount of leniency for what I'm allowed to say before people are willing to shut me down. That's just a way that influence and culture works.
Yeah, but the opposite is also true,
Mhm.
because after you transgress a certain point of popularity, then people will be more critical of you than they would otherwise, just because of that.
Yeah.
And it's a really weird factor, just like the power of what somebody's following is. Because I remember, like, I've been putting my work online for at least 15 years,
Mhm.
but I still have a very small following because that's just how it works sometimes. I don't do a lot of stuff that I'm putting out there just to get attention or anything. And so, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm still building up my base. And I remember being a teenager and only like posting for 3 years online and having maybe 200 followers or something on DeviantArt or whatever. And so there's this weird thing where these people who have these tremendous followings become these weird, like, dense gravity spots around which everything circulates way more powerfully. And I think that really throws this crazy wrench into how things work.
It's the polar opposite of someone with no popularity or anything who has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So how easy is it to go on Twitter with an account without an avatar and tell someone to kill themselves or make fun of their dead grandfather? That's a very easy thing to do. You have nothing that you lose in that exchange. It's shooting fish in a barrel. Meanwhile, I'm going to go off of a Mr. Rogers quote because you all know how much I love Mr. Rogers. He says people who are popular or who have influence in their industry, they're chosen by the public. So their actions do have serious consequences, and what they do matter. They should be viewing themselves as servants to the public because of the position they're in. So, for example, if you're an artist who is creating pornography that has themes of physical abuse, I can't say that's objectively wrong. The BDSM community, for example, has abuse in it, but it's a very nuanced, intimate discussion that can bring healing to others. If you're creating porn that has themes of abuse and rape and all this other stuff, and you're not having discussions about what that means to you, then I think that's a dangerous thing. And I can see that being destructive. That's not me policing it. That's me trying to say, if you are doing something that has a lot of influence and you have a huge fan base, you need to take that seriously and make sure your opinions are known. It may just be a fantasy to you in your drawings, and that's understandable. I don't think everyone who draws rapey porn is a rapist, of course, but I do think you need to express your context.
Yeah.
Porn's a very powerful thing. Human sexuality is a powerful thing. And there are people who are also addicted to porn, maybe even struggling with their attraction to rape. And you're scratching that itch for them without giving any of that context. So as a recovering porn addict, please keep that in mind if you're a popular artist listening to this. Cyber loves me too. Yes. Let's hit up that screen share again and see more about what's going on Fur Affinity. While I'm doing this, Sash, can you pick up some more?
Yeah, there's quite a bit going on in the chat, which the chat doesn't get preserved at the end of the YouTube video, so catch up on this. So, excuse me.
Disgusting.
So, Bear Sage says, the problem with treating the fandom as an escape is that by creating a place where you feel everyone will accept you, that in itself is a political position on the part of the fandom. And they said, agreed on the religion/politics. You will always find people who disagree, but people who haven't learned to disagree in a civil manner. We definitely need to be able to have these discussions. In a local furry chat that we're both in now, earlier, it was last week, somebody said something about, like, I don't care about politics unless they affect me directly. And I responded to that comment and was like, oh, so you only care about like things that affect you. You don't care what other people feel. Great. And that sort of, I knew that would kick off a little bit of rustling some people's feathers, but I did it because I wanted them to be aware of what they were saying. And rather than doing it as like a witch hunt or a call out, I wanted them to say, like, okay, is this what you really feel? Like, this is what this is coming across as. Do you realize that? And there was instantly some reaction to like, oh, we don't talk about politics in here. Please, ugh, like, what are you doing? And I was like, I brought this up because like I care about, I just moved to a new place and I really care about it. I want to be invested in the local community. So I wanted to challenge people in a loving manner, because if we're not able to have a discussion where we're challenging each other and handling difficult topics, then like, what's the point in having any of these surface level relationships where we're just sharing stickers? Like that doesn't really bring any strong value. So I would rather prove that we have a strong enough bond to handle those discussions.
And earlier in that group chat, I did talk to a person, like they said, I hate this about this group. And I said, that's actually not true. You are misinformed. This, and this. And we took it to a private discussion where I said, hey, I'm going to call you out on a lie. So whether you're lying or you're just you're wrong about something, you were confused, whatever, I'm here to correct it. They were pretty staunch on their opinion. And I told them, if you think that, then you have some research to do. And they said, I don't want to do research. I'm here to enjoy myself and I'm here to have fun. My life is shitty enough as it is. I do not need the furry fandom being shitty and stressful. And I think that's completely understandable, but don't say things about any topic as if it's true without actually knowing it, without doing your research. That's being a bigot. Isn't that by definition being a bigot, to spread some ignorance? There's nothing wrong with wanting fun or wanting a relaxing time, but like, please do not be dishonest in any group. Just come out and say, I'd rather not do the research, but then don't share your opinions on it as if you have.
Yeah.
Here's a screen share back to the show. And I loved this comment.
Yeah.
I think that Sylvan says, I think the danger is in assuming we all mean the same thing when using the word politics. I think a few of us are thankful this came up. Plus, by definition, in a participatory system of government, all of us at one time or another become activists. It all depends on the topic. Then, one by one, how it manifests itself is different. Every community has politics. There always has been. What I usually see from folk complaining about it is they feel uncomfortable by angry or heated discussion. And that discomfort is a valid feeling, but only within the confines of the personal experience. Advocating for certain broad stroke bans against political speech or activism strikes me as not only unproductive, but far too vague to be of any real use. I guess what I'm saying is that what some call politics, I might not. What I call politics, others may not. If someone is uncomfortable by X topic in a conversation, it's up to all participants and bystanders at that time to work it out. Definitely appropriate in the context of a group chat on Telegram, right? I guess I don't see any particular way to stop a behavior or type of conversation that's so integral to the human experience. And I'm so glad that they brought that up, because yes, politics can be something that's not about who is in office right now in the United States as president, but it can be the general accepted societal norms of any group.
Yeah. This also reminds me of some stuff that was going on in the local chat again, where when I was pushing that one person to say, is this, like, do you realize this is what you said? In the midst of these, especially one person who did not want there to be any sort of political discussion and they were being struck cranky, there was one person who was like, I really don't like this conflict. Like, this discussion is making me very anxious. And I said, that's okay to have that feeling. Like, I understand that because I have like social anxiety and conflict really stresses me out. So I know what you're feeling. That's okay. I just ask you to hold through. And see how this goes.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the person who I had pushed in the first place to say like, hey, this is what this is coming across like, they said, oh, I think, I really think I misspoke, and this is making me think about how I phrase things. And they were they said, I hope you're not mad at me. And I said, well, I'm not mad at you. I pushed you. I would rather push you in a loving manner and hold you accountable for what you say, in a way that gives like this opportunity for discussion, rather like I'm not looking for a witch hunt. I'm not trying to call it culture you or anything. And ultimately they were really appreciative for the discussion having taken place. And it was mostly the one person who was the most opposed to having any sort of political discussion, but who was also giving the longest comments that were the most cranky, like was the only person who was like, well, I just don't like that any of this is happening. And everybody else was like, oh, okay, this was fine. Yeah. So
this reminds me of the phenomenon of being worried about triggering someone when it comes to really serious issues. I've experienced personally virtually no triggering episodes because people are more interested in either educating me or, being understood.
I think the word triggering in particular is really misused, not just in the fandom, but in the larger sphere online.
Since it's a pop culture thing now.
Yeah. So in the original, I very rarely use it because I don't have very many things that have been traumatic enough that I would call them triggering exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of
PTSD.
Yeah. I don't have like PTSD about anything. Like I said, I have social anxiety, and sometimes certain experiences will create these big sources of stress that I have to really be cognitive about. But yeah, I think when a lot of people are using that word, it's just become really convoluted. And I wish that we could reduce it back to where people only used it when it was really important.
Yeah. And here's something else that I've been thinking of too. When people say that this is just for fun, like the furry fandom, if this is your only time in your life to have fun, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a precious resource.
Yeah.
That automatically makes it very, very important by default, more than just fun. So it makes sense to be upset, and it makes sense to be stressed out if anything stressful comes out.
Yeah. Well, let's read Eric's comment.
Yes, please. While I'm pulling this up, any more comments we should look at in the chat?
Things are moving really fast, so
thanks for your participation, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for being involved in this way.
Yeah.
We are hoping to get some form of the Drink and Think chat back up. It will probably be on Discord at some point.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
So I'm working on renovating our Discord server right now, so check out our Patreons and be in our streams, and we'll get info on that. But because we really miss having these discussions in that format.
Yes.
So yeah, Spencer is talking about LGBT and queer people's lives being political, whether they know it or not. I want to talk about that more. We'll pin that for later. Billy, who is
Swiftpaw,
is Swiftpaw from the group.
Okay, cool. Welcome, Swiftpaw. Thanks for coming.
Says he was raised in the opposite fashion. My parents expected me to be able to create informed opinions and then express them during dinner, like bring something to the table, literally.
What? That's weird.
That is so interesting. I'm really excited to learn more about how that's affected your life.
I am too. Like this. Yeah. That's just like my fantasy.
Mr. Rogers Love.
Informed opinions are my fetish.
Bear Sage says, equality and human rights are inherently a political issue. Political activity occurs whenever humans interact. How you choose to treat others is a political choice. And Billy says, very literal translation of the word politics. I don't object, though. Basically taking responsibility for the impact of your work. Yes.
Oh, okay. So while you're queuing, let's get that. Okay, let's get Eric's quote up and start keeping in mind some comments that you want to read next.
Sure. I'll just leave this where I had it.
So our friend Eric, animalskullmasks.com, lovely person, says, politics to me doesn't seem to have any relevance to the furry fandom. The communities that have grown around this fandom, on the other hand, are another case entirely. The people that comprise the communities also brought with them their own, the people that comprise the communities also brought with them their own individual life experiences and cultures. Not everyone will be of the same mind and opinion. Any community with a division of power, admins, influencers, patrons, artists, fans, they'll generate their own issues and politics to deal with. How the community handles these internal politics is paramount to its health, growth, and perception by others. So while it's not what we came here for as furries, as a community, there is no escaping politics. And I hope you all appreciate this comment because Eric was up until 2 a.m. writing it, his time zone.
Yeah, this is a treat to see because Eric is very selective with the words that he shares and does not express things very often. So
Yes,
I was
you
like,
better appreciate
yeah,
that.
I was so glad to see him saying this. I'm like, whoa, I get to see like behind the veil here. And then we have a response from Ofrion, who is somebody that I really respect, who has
one of my favorite artists in the fandom.
They have really they've been around for a long time, and they're a very thoughtful person who has also directly helped me in a time of need. So I appreciate that.
So they agree with this and say the furry fandom is often centered around A, what's acceptable to depict in drawing, and B, what real life actions are acceptable, and C, the pricing of art. The latter is what's of most interest to them as an artist. So I think we can all agree artists pricing themselves fairly is an important thing in the furry fandom and really anywhere, but especially the furry fandom, because art is the backbone of our community. Yeah. We're a very visual community. We're very individual. It's one of the reasons we work here instead of in AAA studios. Yeah. We really believe this is the best place to work. Now, the downside of this is you are generating your own politics constantly, and there are issues to overcome. But if we reframe politics in that way, it definitely changes how I personally feel about the discussion, since that wasn't on my mind earlier. I'm really thankful for those kinds of opinions.
Yeah, there were a few comments we had, like maybe just 2 or 3 that said, that made a distinction between internal and external politics, and they defined internal politics. We love those internal external divisions, don't we?
Oh, we do.
They define internal politics as something which you definitely absolutely cannot avoid, because it is the result of admins and mods and online cultures and who's running those groups. Like, who runs FA? How does that affect how you interact in that space? What if those people are doing shitty things? What are you going to do about it or not? Like, you can't really escape that, and it's going to have an impact on you because that's the venue through which you're communicating with all these people. So if Twitter decides that now you have to pay to see your followers' tweets or whatever, and they want to show more promoted stuff, like, if they fuck up the algorithm that bad, then that affects you. Like, you can't escape the political ramifications of somebody who's running a platform. On the other hand, external politics are things that are going on in the larger world that are not within the fandom, but outside of it.
Spencer would love to see a pricing furry art / fursuits drink and think.
Ooh, yeah, we should do that.
Oh my gosh,
we could do that for the week after next, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
I'd also love to find like a good guest for that or something.
Yeah, like I would love like Beetlecat or someone who's like a super solid fursuit maker, but Beetlecat's not currently open for commissions, I don't think. But anyway, yeah, pin in that. Yeah, excellent suggestion.
Also a note, since we used to do Drink and Think weekly, now we're alternating Drink and Think and Fursona time.
Yeah.
So
it keeps our fandom, or I guess our fan base, focusing on generating a lot of art, like the most art possible. I feel kind of anxious when my Furfinity gallery is all ads for talks and no paintings.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, we can't really escape those internal ones, but also going back to what Spencer, who I saw them mention, they are Laser Raccoon, just under a different name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so queer people can't really escape politics, especially if it is inherently tied to your body because you're trans, where like I can't not be political. Like, we run into this all the time when I'm trying to pursue like medical treatment or things like that.
Or let's ignore that before getting a driver's license.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had to go, in order to get my gender changed on my license, I had to hire a lawyer. Originally I was gonna try and do it without a lawyer, but there's like in Texas, you go before a judge and the different judges have different opinions. And if you go before the one who's not on your side and they refuse you, then you can't really try again.
So you have to pick the right judge. Yeah. You have to do it after they've eaten lunch.
Yeah.
You have to like meet all these other parameters to make sure you have a high likelihood of all of these weird, seemingly black market-esque tactics to just do something lawful.
Yeah. So I went and my therapist suggested a lawyer who gave us a big discount to get it done, but I was still only able to do it because my parents were supportive of me and who were willing to pay for that. So I got it done. The judge was actually a really great guy because we went for the right one, and we got that done. But at that time in Texas, I don't know what the legal ramifications are now that gay marriage is legal federally, but I had to surrender my right to marry a woman because of a weird case in Texas some years ago where a firefighter was married to a woman who was intersex. So on her birth certificate it said male, but she'd like developed female and identified that way and everything. There's
so many.
There's a couple dozen.
There's so many cases of this.
Yeah, and
it's still a defensible position to kill a trans person and say, "Oh, well, I didn't know they're trans," and that's a legal defense.
Yeah, but with this case, the firefighter died in a fire, and his family sued to dissolve the marriage post-mortem so that they didn't have to, so the widow didn't receive any benefits or funds or anything. And they won that case, and so that's why I had to give up a right to marry so that there wouldn't be a repeat of that case in the future.
But this, like, to get back to the fandom, if Sasha's going to avoid civil rights at all in any interactions in the fandom, he has to deny his history. He can't have any characters that represent any level outside a gender binary. There's certain things he has to do to avoid the idea of any level of politics.
Yeah.
Like that, like external politics.
Yeah, if I upload a piece of art and the character is trans or even highly androgynous, then that's inherently political and I can't escape that.
Yeah.
Like that's me making a statement on what I believe and what the experience and context of my life is. So
there are plenty of people who are marginalized, whether because of ethnicity, gender, sexuality, or even classist they're poor.
Stratified?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or people who are severely poor, they are extremely vulnerable in our country. And their lives are political. It's like they don't get to escape it. For the people that don't have to worry about that, that's a really fortunate, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep telling you check your privilege, but if you're compassionate about other people, then yeah, it is going to mean their lives are political and they don't get that luxury you do to just have fun.
Yeah. So this also ties back into what does escapism mean for different people?
Yeah.
Because for somebody who's trying to escape a situation where they're not able to be themselves in any fashion, then the fandom as an escape is also political. Like it's both of those things at once for them.
Yes.
And if they want to show up to a furry community and present themselves, then like right now the case is that that's a safe thing to do. Like the trans population in the fandom is 10 times higher than the general population. There's a reason for that because people recognize the power of this as a way to come into their own being. And it is amazing to see people take off in their lives once they're able to put the right pieces in place that way. Yeah. Like there are people, there's a huge percentage, I don't know the statistics, but people who are victims of abuse in the fandom who have come here for various reasons related to that, or who are social outcasts.
Raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by someone in your high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but it also has the tendency to attract abusers too, in a weird way. Like I hear about a lot of abusive relationships happening. So we can't just ignore these things because that's how people are able to like be in the fandom. There's a lot of really valuable people who contribute a lot of things, and it would suck if they weren't able to participate because they were forced out.
It's really wonderful, says your dear witch, whom I will assume is Mel. It's really wonderful that in the furry fandom, I was able to figure out my gender and shit. I wouldn't have been able to to do that without the safety of art and personas.
Yeah.
So that's an example of an overlap of something incredibly serious and something that's escapism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also say people who are abused often pass on abuse. Yes. And also, I love you, Jonathan. So
it's trivia now, but yes.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
I just learned a new preferred name.
Yeah. Cool.
Neat. Hi, trivia. Let's go. Do you want to hit up this comment now?
Sure. Yeah. Since we've had it for a while.
Yeah. Let's do that. And again, thanks to everyone. It's really great to have this kind of engagement. This is the most important part of what we do, is building these relationships and having these discussions. We draw a shit ton, but honestly, the ideas are the most important part of this.
Yeah, we're very personally invested in the fandom, so we're not bringing this in because we want to wreck it or anything.
Yeah,
quite the opposite.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I hope anyone who's like pissed at us keeps that in mind. We care about the fandom at least as much as you do. Pony Guy says, I have a somewhat long perspective on the furry fandom, having been skirting around it since the mid-'80s. Okay, first off, thank you for chiming in as an older furry. I something that I lament is the gap between older furry experience and younger furries. So I would love to do Drink and Think. That's a roundtable of older furries, just talking about things that
Yes,
they're glad have
absolutely.
changed or things that they wish hadn't changed.
Yeah, once I hit 200 on my Patreon, then I went to start a more formalized interview series where we talk to a lot of people about those sorts of issues. And I do have one Gray Muzzle lined up who I got to talk to for a while at BLFC, and I'm so excited to hear the history from him because he's such a sensitive and thoughtful person who has so much to offer that I don't want that history to be lost.
If you want those interviews to happen faster or at all, then I linked the Patreon for Sasha. So yeah, if he gets to 200 a month, you're going to see those interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So back to Pony Guy's comment. I also have a somewhat long perspective on the furry fandom since the mid 80s. While I agree with your comments as regards to, well,
this is in response to the above.
Okay, yeah, so this is in response to this comment. While I agree with those comments as regards to the way that highly motivated individuals have a tendency to destroy the cohesiveness of any group they impose themselves upon, I would be curious as to the experiences of inclusiveness experienced by women and minorities in the furry fandom. This is in response to this user who was worried about, in general, what is it called? Political correctness and call-out culture. That seemed to be their general fear.
Mm-hmm.
And they cited the closing of the 2 conventions on the west half of the country. Furry has seen its share of white knighting on topics that'd be familiar to a social justice warrior and topics more esoteric, nor is that a recent phenomenon. I remember political correctness arguments going all the way back to before the World Wide Web existed, when people had to use dial-up modems to connect to their local university in order to find people to argue with. Alt.fan.furry was notorious for some of its shouting matches, some of which I suspect are still going on to this day, as none of the principals are willing to budge a millimeter on their opinions. It's a rose-colored view of the past, and furry fandom that live and let live was the operating principle. Many of the arguments 30 years ago centered on how to improve the image of furry, largely involving which groups of deviants to shun and demean, in the name of cleaning up the fandom to make it more socially acceptable. Kind of myopic and narcissistic, considering that every fandom has its bizarro side. Remember Burned Furs? That was one of the largest political stakes driven in the heart of the furry fandom, with the intention of splitting it into factions of decency versus perversion. And that was over 20 years ago. Would you consider them an identity group? The only thing they seem to have in common was a contempt for beginning artists and loathing of any adult material that they did not personally enjoy or create. I remember someone coming up with the doctrine of love the fandom, hate the fans. This is akin to those who decry the misuse of language by modern generations, failing to realize that language does not exist separate from the way it is expressed by every generation who uses it. It is only through the exercise of it by those who participate that it is defined. Else we would all be speaking Saxon. It also reminds me of my mother, whose version of religion is that God is real, but all religions have it wrong. Sure. So furry fandom is a wonderful thing, but furry fans are not worthy of it. Peculiar at best, more insidiously is also akin to the doctrine of love the sinner but hate the sin, which is most often directed towards homosexuals by those trying to project themselves as inclusive without actually going as far as actually viewing someone as deserving full equality. It seems that identity groups are fine as long as they are the identity groups that one approves of or belongs to, but all the others are divisive. Much like adult furry art, intolerable deviancy is in the eye of the beholder. I agree that selfishly defining real furry fandom in exclusively egotistical terms is a recipe for disaster and fragmentation. I disagree that this is a new phenomenon or exclusively attributable to people who, for all I know, might have some very real and painful experiences that have already colored their experiences of the furry fandom. The way to keep it together is not to keep talking. Talking is how one broadcasts one's own opinion. That's the way to create a bubble of self-agreement. Nobody ever learned anything by talking constantly. It's more important to keep listening.
And this was a valid response too.
Yeah.
So Kosuke says, oh man, yeah, there are people in real life that still want to clean up furry groups in my local area. It's kind of like a cultural genocide. If you like porn, you're a bad person. Interestingly enough, in my area, they happen to be the politics is against the rules people, which unamazingly is actually a tool just to further the political views of the BIPs/moderators/admins of said local community. Also, if no one talks, there's nothing to listen to. There has to be both. There has to be a culture of valuing both.
So these dynamics, we were really excited to read these to you, especially because you should pay very close attention to anyone who's been in the fandom and was paying attention in the last few decades.
Mhm.
Because history repeats itself if you don't study it.
Yeah, there are people who have been in the fandom for a long time who are not paying attention and don't
Yes.
have much to offer. So when you get like that culmination of both, then it's worth paying attention to.
Yep. See, another very tiny comment, politics is cancer, especially fandoms. Dragging in politics just ruins it, as we've seen it with RMFC. I guess tax fraud does count as political.
Yeah, RMFC was not.
That wasn't the result of a political kerfuffle.
Yeah.
People who say that are definitely misunderstanding the details.
And you would know because you were.
Yeah, I know because my house my house was the one that was threatened during that debacle. So yep, me and my housemates were sent rape and murder threats.
Mm.
And the
con was shut down because of tax evasion. Like that was what put the nail in the coffin there. It's just that happened to get dug up during that process.
Yeah, the chairpersons who ran it, they not only fucked up on several levels, but the people who were on staff, who were key members, they didn't know about a lot of issues. They couldn't have even helped it. A lot of really good people, and like even dealers too, they're put out of jobs and positions to continue a convention.
Yeah.
And that's not fun.
Well, and that level of miscommunication is actually not uncommon in the fandom because like we have all these huge conventions. Well, they're not, I mean, they feel huge by furry standards because MFF has like 9,000 attendees this past year.
The Gen Con has how many? Over 50,000?
Gen Con has over 60,000. I don't know what the last number was. We're doing Gen Con in early August. I've also done Dragon Con and other like Emerald City and stuff like that. So my idea what a huge convention is much different. It's like it's tens of degrees. Yeah. But the way that they have things organized is to a much more professional degree than the furry fandom does, because the furry fandom doesn't always take itself seriously enough. Or I think another big problem is that a lot of staff people who are organizers for conventions are not paid. They're just volunteers, and so they can only give so much social or emotional or work to their position. And so you'll have dealers leads who don't care about you or who drop the ball, or people who have the information you need who will not give you the information you need because they have an attitude problem or because they just don't check their inbox for a month. And when like us as people who make our living being contributors to and involved in the fandom, like we need that information to survive.
Oh yeah.
So
you want to, okay, I'm sure we have plenty of people who've experienced furry conventions. If you haven't, they're highlights of my life. Yeah. So if you have a good convention that's run well, a lot of the big ones in America are just fine. Euro, for instance, happens to be my favorite furry con right now. Please go out of your way to attend it. You probably won't regret it. But the fandom is largely what you put into it and the kinds of relationships you build. Sasha and I, our fan bases are very loving and intentional. And I'm proud to be in a place where I've had people of many different political affiliations and cultures and contexts in the same discussions. That's actually a very important part of who I am. So I'm not here to champion like any one blind ideology. That's not why I exist. I exist to love others and help them love themselves. But please keep in mind, if you're going to a furry convention as a general patron, that's way different than going there for your job. We don't know if we're going to make it into Midwest Fur Fest, and that's going to affect whether we can survive the year or not. And that's the story. That's a story for hundreds of furry artists, even those in the artist alley or dealer's den. If they don't get a table, they don't know how they're going to eat that winter.
Yeah. So it's really important to us that the fandom does stay like sustainable and everything. But
and we don't have the luxury of it being just for fun.
Yeah. So we have people who are saying, well, I want it to be just for fun. But if we don't keep these like really toxic parts of it from spreading, or if we don't contain those or try to eradicate them, then you won't have a fandom to have fun with anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to sound like it's a threat, like I'm trying to get you to do what I want. I'm saying that because I'm also generally concerned about making sure that things stay good.
Yes. So should we talk about what happened with the Telegram chats that shut it down?
Yeah, that's definitely worth talking on next to bring in.
Okay, so we had alt furries come into my group and like my 2 Telegram groups.
You can see the video that sparked this too.
Yeah, just check out my YouTube. You can see it's the most recent one featuring Dio.
Yeah, we had, and we haven't had Drink and Thinks for a while.
This is the reason why, and this is why.
Because of that. We were also moving and doing a lot of things that we couldn't do, but
yeah.
Yeah, so we did this discussion because we wanted to have a multi-sided conversation about an article that Dio wrote about
white supremacy and like tactics of neo-Nazis and white supremacists. And we're not using that to be like, oh, everyone's a Nazi. Like, no, actual honest to goodness fascists and white supremacists and neo-Nazis trying to court people, whether it's in the furry fandom or elsewhere. It's just stats and techniques.
Yeah.
So people, there are alt furries that went in just to shit on her. They didn't actually contribute to the discussion. They went into my group, and a lot of members were immediately threatened because of that political narrative. And mind you, I had people who felt threatened by Dio before, who said, if you're hosting her, I can't support you. And I said, all right, I understand that, but if you trust me at all based on my beliefs, you have to know I'm doing this for a very good reason.
Yeah.
When all the alt furries came in, I had like at least 6 people message me privately saying, these people are they're going to shit over your group. They're going to try and shut it down, and they're going to be toxic. I even had Dio warn me, right now, Jonathan, they are pretending to be nice, but they're laughing behind your back, and they're finding ways to disseminate the group. And sure enough, we do have chat logs that reflected that when I was having private discussions with members or saying, hey, I'm not going to block anyone up front because I've been a member of toxic online communities. Please express yourselves and say what you mean. They did a bad job of sharing personal feelings. Instead, they just try to win arguments.
Yeah, they were trying to win arguments for the sake of it, but none of it mattered to them on like an integral level. It was just like, yeah, now I won. Okay, cool, but like,
yeah, they weren't sharing anything about themselves.
How does this affect your life? Because it definitely affects my life.
It had nothing to do about what was most important to me and my platform, which is loving others, loving yourself, sharing who you are. Then do any of it. And yeah, it was all the alt furries that were in there. I'm sorry to tell it to you, but no, this isn't an equal sides or bad thing. I've never had anyone who was not an alt furry try and make lies about me having AIDS and make plans to spread it around or do other really weird things that are trivial. That
we have had people on Twitter be shitty by taking stuff out of context.
Yeah, we did have some very much not Nazi furs be shitlords at us.
Yeah, so that's also worth mentioning.
Oh my gosh, yes.
When people talk about like, well, the left does like all these witch hunts, and if you don't agree with us, then you're a monster. Okay, well, I like obviously my political existence as like a trans person, and like I guess I'm a democratic socialist, I would say.
Yeah, probably.
That's more on the side of the left, but I hate when people do witch hunts that are unbased and that are harmful and that are counterproductive to like people like in progress overall. Like I do not support people taking things out of context, lying, trying to look for an excuse to really bring someone down a peg when it doesn't need to be done. I do support having a thoughtful discussion about problematic issues and trying to recognize that it is always complex and that people are always coming from this like really personal sources. And that doesn't mean that like, okay, you're doing like you were an abuser because you were abused from when you were a kid and that's just how you learn to act. That doesn't mean it's okay that you did what you did or whatever. Yeah. But we should understand these things at least, because otherwise how are we going to make any progress to prevent anything from happening if we're not offering healing?
Yeah, something that was, I guess, why I had Dio on it all. I'm really proud that I lived with her for almost 2 years and we're really good like friends, really close people with each other. And I'm not a communist, and I frustrate the hell out of her. I'm super proud of how much we disagree with each other, but we mean so much to the other person. So I was hoping that for all the other people who follow me, who get that, the alt furries would look at this and be like, oh, okay, well, Jonathan's clearly not some sort of puppet for the alt left that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, there's no centralized.
There's nothing centralized. Meanwhile, the alt right in the furry fandom is centralized. And they said privately, let's not mention Jonathan's group at all, ever, but let's also comb it for data, even though it's a public group.
Yeah.
And let's try and turn him against Dio. How can you turn me against someone I don't agree with on everything? Like, good luck.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So I mean, if you think this tone I have where I'm trying to understand things is serious and I'm warning you about this, yeah, keep that in mind. I'm trying to understand things better. I'm trying to make a fandom that's healthy. So I hope you can value my observations. Not everyone's opinions are valid, honestly. Yeah. Some people are trying to lie. Some people are trying to lead you astray. Some people who are even furries that lean to the left, they want to just shit on you and make fun of you. And that it really gets their rocks off if they can be like, I screen cap this out of context and I will virtue signal to my peers that you are terrible.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, there's a reason that I left Tumblr a long time ago. Like,
yeah, it's like leaving Tumblr, leaving 4chan. I left 4chan. That was more my shtick. I used to be a B-tard in high school, but I grew up out of it.
So it might be worth linking that. Oh God, what's it called? The Radiolab episode debate we listened to that was part of what's their political or their Senate.
That's called More Perfect.
Yeah, it's a More Perfect episode where they have a debate about freedom of speech on online platforms like Facebook or Twitter. They focus on Twitter a lot, especially. And one thing that I think was really interesting is in the second, like they have two small debates on there. And in the second one, a guy in the audience talks and says, we should link this in the notes when we publish the final thing.
Sure.
He says, I used to have really horrible opinions. I was not a person. If I saw those now, I would cringe. I was so ignorant and hateful, and my background just raised me for that. And the reason I'm not that way now is because I had conversations with people who really were patient with me and thoughtful. And now I'm trying to do the right thing. And so he is against censoring speech online because he wants people to be able to be spoken to and come around. So I'm not going to assume that people who are part of these groups are necessarily beyond redemption. I imagine most of them have really shitty emotional lives that bring them to this space. And I would love it if they were not in that situation. So yeah, but that's also really difficult because part of the one of the debaters' response was yeah, that's great, but it's not my job to do that. I should be able to get online as a Black person without having to defend all this stuff. It's not my job to convince you not to be shitty. And that's one of those things that's really complicated and nuanced. And as humans, I think we have this inborn sense of right and wrong and the way things should be, or justice or things like that. But sometimes what the best solution is not one that is the way it should be. Mm-hmm. So no, the people who are oppressed and who are suffering, it should not be your job to convince other people not to be shitty or to extend all this emotional energy and your time to sit down and go through the 101 with people to convince them not to be supporters of genocide or whatever. But unfortunately, that's the position we're in, is that we have to extend this emotional energy or things aren't going to change. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. If you're not good at that, or if it's too difficult for you because it's really charged stuff, then that's fine. You should not feel like it is your absolute duty to. But if you are capable of it and you want to make the choice to be somebody who takes on that role, then I would encourage you to figure out how to do so in a way where this comes back to in-group, out-group, which is another talk we've given. You can find in Jonathan's YouTube archive. But yeah, it's a loaded topic.
There's something else that I want to bring up that's in regards to leftist furries and alt furries. And again, those aren't opposites because one has a central locus and one doesn't. But stick with me here. So the problem, I don't think everyone who is an alt furry member is aggressive, but I think that the problem, I know that I've observed the problem with alt furry is that they don't hold members accountable for anything in the context of free speech and not believing anything. So the problem with, I guess, the leftist furries, if you want to call them, is the polar opposite of hyper accountability, where you'll take a thing out of context and say, this isn't acceptable. So I think that's a really interesting observation that I noticed. Yeah. The most damaging members Like all of alt furry doesn't hold its members accountable for anything at all. So that's why it becomes in its insulated faction, it becomes like a sort of petri dish where things keep growing and spreading out,
Yeah.
and it fosters negativity.
You've also made the observation that there's not a lot of creator content in there.
Yeah, like alt furries, something else I've noticed is they don't help each other out. Like they're not raising money if someone needs help.
They're not creating meaningful work.
Yeah, there was a mod who personally tried to shit on me and lied to me in private messages, and I was like, I don't know if I can believe you, but I'm willing to listen. I saw recently on his Twitter that he and his partner are being evicted because they can't afford rent, and I'm not seeing alt furries helping him. And that scares me because I see members on the left all the time taking like buying commissions for other people or offering homes.
Last month our fan base helped raise like over $400 for a friend of ours so that he wouldn't default on our loans. And
they didn't even know him.
Yeah, we were just doing art for people who donated whatever they could. And
yeah, because we can't afford to help him, but we were like, okay, we'll work and raise money.
And I don't see that happening in alt fur.
No. No, I don't, and that really saddens me because I can think of countless examples of the left raising money and like offering their resources. Like even the YouTube accounts and patrons I've seen, they don't have any money going in for the alt furries because it's a small group, but I don't see them pouring into each other in constructive ways. That's the part that scares me.
Because that's like our most valuable part of the fandom is how people build each other up and find like these connections. Yeah,
like if they are actually believing their own insular context, then they live in a way different world than we do, and they live in a different fandom, and they probably don't have firsthand exposure to the most important parts because they probably got funneled in somewhere eventually. And I mean, this is why it's like a really emotional thing. It's like if somehow alt furry got shut down, I mean, they got kicked off Discord, I think, but like if they got closed down, I wouldn't be like, yay, we won, the fandom's cool again. I'd be like, are these people going to be okay? Like if they have their social group cut, do they have people in their lives in whatever shitty situations they're in that it's going to make their lives better? I worry about that when people make fun of me on the left on Twitter. Like, is this person meeting their needs? Because on their feed it looks like they experience a lot of hurt. Who's going to take care of them? That scares the hell out of me. So that's a really big deal whenever someone's hurting in our fan bases, in our Discords, and even on Twitch while I'm drawing. I make sure, is a person's baseline met? Are they safe? Can I help? Do I know anyone in the area that can help them?
There's an interesting comment from Largo the Galka who says, to them, the worst thing you can do is be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, the most valuable thing you can do in a lot of cases.
Yes.
So
when I tried being vulnerable to members of alt furry, then they tried to take it as ammunition to cut me down. But I'm actually really thankful that happened because now I get to tell people I didn't block anyone in advance. I let that happen. So do with that information what you want. I think that makes me more powerful now. I think it makes me more powerful than anyone who blocked them outright. Yeah, I think that makes me more powerful.
Because what do you mean by powerful? Expand on that.
Because the only game I have is my principles. I actively share negative things about myself and the problems I'm trying to accomplish. I'm very honest about my history. I actually have no secrets left on this planet. Believe it or not, I'm not making that up. So that's the polar opposite of an individual who's trying to appear stronger or more capable than they are. And I did something that was very risky that could have put people in a public group at risk, even though it's public, and I feel bad about that. I had people just tell me to go fuck myself, and they probably blocked me on Twitter by now.
There's only like one person who really did that out of like there are over 60 people in the group.
I think there's at least two.
Okay.
And he was also the most popular one in the group. Mm-hmm. So keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of thing matters. Let's check if there's anything else in the comment. Yeah, they couldn't. So Billy says they couldn't force you to alter your course, basically. Yeah, that's pretty much the truth. I heard them out. I treated them like human beings, and I'm still going to treat them like human beings. I don't use any block lists yet because I want to tell people I don't use block lists. And that's the only reason. So it's a really complicated thing, and I'm glad that we have the people that we do in our fan base who are willing to talk about these important things and say what matters. I feel honored every time someone says something difficult that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
We had a member today who was an outsider to the furry fandom who just joined on the Discord from Twitch, who started by making fun of furries. Like he came into my stream, it was just like, so do you like want to fuck in animal suits or something? And then by the end of it, we had like a really fun and entertaining, thoughtful discussion with him. And it's really cool. Like I'm so excited that he had that talk with us. That's like what we do all the time.
We were absurdly giddy about it.
I was vibrating with happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so honored by my fan base. I have the coolest followers, in part because most of them do not agree with what I think about stuff.
Yeah.
That honors me.
So I guess to bring this back around, what is the position and responsibility of furries who just want to have fun? Like, what can we ask of them that's not going to, like, make what they're in the fandom for disappear? But what can we expect or ask that's decent?
So I would ask of people who think the furry fandom's just for fun and that's it for them. I would ask them to be gracious with those who don't have that freedom that you have. Some people will never have that freedom even from birth. I would ask that you excuse yourself if something's too difficult for you, or if you're strong enough.
That's not saying you're giving up.
That's not saying
recognize where you are.
Yeah, like feel free to express your limits and say this isn't for me and I have to go, because you don't have to convince people that things need to stop being political. I mean, that's not your place to do that, and it's also not my place to tell you stop having fun all the time. I'm not going to do that, because if you have that stressful of a life where you need that escape, I don't covet your life. I built a life that's around doing very difficult things, but I love my job from sunrise to sunset. I'm doing this full time. And the people who are here for escape, I bet 100% of them cannot relate to that. There's no way they can. I doubt it, not in the furry fandom, because our job is being invested in people.
Yeah.
That's going to include things that are political, of course. So yeah, to recap, if you are here just for fun, by all means, please enjoy yourself. Please hang out with people who are different from you. Be curious. That goes a long way. Be curious and gracious. And if you have any tolerance to go beyond your normal limits, you'll probably be a better person for it if you learn.
Yeah. I would say if you're in the situation where you're in like a group chat or just in an online space where a political discussion comes up, I think instead of just saying like politics are bad, stop that. If you feel uncomfortable, then I would say express that you're uncomfortable. I think that's going to open people up to be receptive and to have empathy with you and to meet you where you are, as opposed to just trying to dominate the space by saying that you don't want a thing to be happening. Yeah,
please don't worry about triggering someone. Give them the chance to build a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And, if I can sound a little mean for a second, don't talk out of your ass. Do not say things that you don't know. Don't say things with certainty when you haven't done your research. The reason I didn't block alt furries is because I had no firsthand experience with them. And I do think that was worth it, what I did now, but it was a very, very uncomfortable, stressful moment of my life. And it cost me something, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Fair-Sage is asking anyone in a Telegram group that is open to discussions like this, civil discourse about stuff. Most of the chats I'm in don't want any political discussions. We will be trying to reinstate our groups very soon. If you keep tabs on subscribe here.
Follow us on YouTube right now. Click subscribe, and you will be notified when that happens.
Yeah, you can always back us on Patreon. Even if you're just following on Patreon without backing, then you'll get the public updates, which will probably have that information.
But we also have no way to contact you if you aren't giving any money. So the lowest tier for me is, again, like 6 pennies a day.
Yeah, so follow on Twitter, all that good stuff. We've both got mailing lists on our websites. So.
And also check in on twitch.tv/JonathanBear.
Yes.
We stream from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. almost every night of the week.
With a 3-hour break in the middle.
Yeah, and during lunch breaks.
That's Mountain Standard Time, by the way.
Yeah, Mountain Standard Time. We offer critiques and we offer our services, like our professional services as educators. We offer it for free because we're very serious about pouring into the fandom. And we have some really cool people joining the call. We have people in the stream who are members of the military. They're representing countries like, we have Lithuania, Germany, France, Australia / England, of course, America. Yay. Like and we're always talking about cultural differences too. So if you want to be a better person by surrounding yourself with people who are comfortable talking, I shouldn't say comfortable, but they're open to talking about religion, addiction, abortion, anything like that, but trying to like relate. That's our platform. We're probably the only platform in the whole furry fandom that does that. So I think it's valuable. And I mean, like we legitimately care about everyone watching this. Like, it's probably a bad idea how much I care about you, whoever you are watching this. It's probably a bad idea.
That's just the way you live your life.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that, but I do it. I want to do it. So I think that's how we'll end things. Again, thank you for honoring us with your attention. Your attention's valuable. Your time on this earth is limited, and you can never get more time. So thank you for spending your most valuable resource on us right now in this moment.
Yeah, we're really glad to be back to broadcasting regularly. So come out, hang out in the Twitch streams. We'd love to have you.
Yes. So we hope you have a good night. Our next stream is going to be Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, but we're taking tomorrow off so we can go to the farmer's market, but also work by having mentee appointments. So,
yeah, we have to organize the admin or the inventory room and all that good stuff.
Our days off aren't really days off.
Yeah, we're getting there. Moving is hard. So.
Yeah, we just moved to Santa Fe and we built our whole life around doing art full time. This is like, there's no living room here. There's no TV. There's no couch. So when we say we're serious about achieving our goals and we want to help you with that, like, take us up on that opportunity. On that note, you have a good night and be kind to each other.
Yeah, we'll see you next time for Fursona, or next week for Fursona time, and another drink and think the week after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Be kind to yourself too. Don't you slip.